Please let me know if the screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So today what we will start with is our next topic, which is adsorption. And this section that I'm going to teach you about adsorption, you can find the material in Chemical Engineering Kinetics by J.M. Smith. If you have the third edition, then it is chapter 7. And if you have the second edition, then a small bit is in chapter 8 and some of it is in chapter 9. I have uploaded the second edition for you. So if you follow that, then you'll find the material in chapter 8 and 9. So why do we have to study adsorption out here? Because you've already studied adsorption in your mass transfer classes. That is the first thing that we have to see. Now, when I have told you the basic properties of a catalytic reaction between a solid and a fluid, whether it's a gas or a liquid, you have seen that one of the primary requirements is that the gas or the liquid must interact with the active site on the solid and it must form a bond. So the first step that is of any catalytic reaction is the adsorption of the reactant on the surface of the solid at the active site. So these molecules can attach to the surface in two different ways, depending on the nature of interaction and the forces that are involved. So adsorption is essentially the first step to any heterogeneously catalyzed reaction. So that is why when we write the rate of the reaction, we have the first step that we are considering is going to be the a step of adsorption. If you remember, I had told you, first they interact, then the product formation happens, A goes to B, and then B has to be released into the atmosphere or the bulk. So when B is released, that is essentially your desorption step. So when we talk about, so the first thing that we have to learn about is what is adsorption, what types of adsorption are there, so we can then consider them as a first step in a heterogeneous reaction, and when we try to find out the rate of such a reaction. So adsorption can be of two types. One is physical adsorption or physisorption, and the second one is chemical adsorption or chemisorption. Now, which type will depend on the, like I've written out here. Let me just get my pointer. That it depends on the nature of interaction and the forces that are involved. So let us first look at physisorption. So physisorption, this is the phenomena where the adsorbate molecules attach themselves to the adsorbent substance under the influence of van der Waals forces. And this is called adsorption or physical adsorption or physisorption. That means now there are two things. One is the adsorbent surface, which is the solid surface out here. And these are the adsorbent molecules, which are the red ones, which are on top. This is the substrate surface. And these molecules come and attach themselves to the points in the substrate surface and by means of forces, which are known as van der Waals forces. These van der Waals forces, which are mainly due to dipole-dipole interactions, between the fluid molecules and solid are relatively weak. Now, people who have done my course on environmental pollution, you will remember that I had taught you a bit about this there itself when we were talking about the process of adsorption. But now we're going to talk in terms of adsorption, which will be then used as a part of my heterogeneously catalyzed reaction. So these forces, which are between the fluid molecules and the solid, they are weak forces. That is the first thing that we have to remember about the physisorption process is that the van der Waals forces involved are relatively weak in nature. The second point that this process is non-specific. That means any kind of reactant or solid or sorry, a fluid can become physisorbed on any surface. So there is no specificity. It is not like a particular fluid will only attach to a particular solid. Anything can adsorb anywhere. So this is like the process of condensation. For example, when you have a condensation on a surface, all you need is the temperature to be lower than your saturation temperature, and the gas will become like a liquid. So this is something like that they keep on attaching at different parts of my substrate surface. This process is exothermic. That means heat is given out during the adsorption process, but the heat of adsorption is kind of low. So what kind of heats of adsorption are we talking about? The heat of absorption is in the range of 1 to 15 kilocalorie per mole, or in terms of kilojoules per mole, it is 4.2 to 63 kilojoules per mole. So these are low values. The amount of gas physically adsorbed decreases rapidly with increasing temperature. So adsorption is facilitated at low temperatures, and as the temperature increases, the process of adsorption, the rate goes down essentially. So we will prefer to carry out the physisorption process at a low temperature. Physisorption is not responsible for catalysis. So when we have a catalytic reaction, then the step that is involved is not physisorption. What is it? We'll have a look at it later, but it is not physisorption. Physisorption is proportional to the amount of surface, and it is not limited to monolayer on the surface. So what do I mean by that? That the surface, amount of surface is not important. So when I say monolayer, that means if this is my surface, and each of these molecules are adsorbed on this, and slowly what we see is the entire surface is being covered by these adsorbed molecules. And when the entire surface is covered by a single layer, that is known as monolayer coverage. That means the entire surface is covered by this. But the process of physisorption need not be restricted to that. It can be multi-layer. Multi-layer means after one layer is formed, you can have a second layer of molecules on top of that, or maybe a third layer of molecules on top of that. So this is not limited to monolayer. You can have multi-layer adsorption on the surface if we are talking about the physisorption process. But then why is it important? When do we use physisorption? Physisorption is mainly used for determining physical properties of solid catalysts, such as surface area and pore size distribution. So the surface area and pore size distribution is determined by using the physisorption process. Next, let us look at what is the chemisorption process. What is different from physisorption, and that we have a different name for it, that is known as chemical adsorption or chemisorption. The process of adsorption, where the gas molecules or atoms are held to the solid surface by chemical bonds. The last time it was van der Waals forces. Now it is known as by bonds which are like chemical bonds, and this is known as chemisorption. The valence forces involved are of the same kind as those involved in the formation of chemical compounds. So when you form a chemical compound between two molecules or two species, then the kind of bond forces that are involved, which are known as valence forces, the same kind of forces we see when we have a chemisorption process. That means when the adsorbed gas molecule comes and sits and is chemisorbed on the solid surface, the forces that are involved are essentially known as valence forces. These valence forces are much stronger than those that are involved in physical adsorption. Much stronger, and hence it will be more difficult to let go. For chemisorption, there is a rearrangement of the electron density. The electron structure of the gas molecule has a certain binding with the electron structure of the adsorbent. Adsorbent means this is the substrate or the solid substance. And then we have the electron, the gas molecules which are getting adsorbed on top of it. So we are saying that the electron structure of these gas molecules, the electrons which are surrounding it, interacts or forms a bond with the electron structure of the adsorbent. And hence this is a process which involves a rearrangement of the electron density between the solid surface and the adsorbed gas molecule. Now, chemisorption is specific, and an adsorbed molecule will get chemisorbed only on selected adsorbents. So what does that mean? That means you cannot adsorb any gas on any surface. This is specific. That means hydrogen gas can be adsorbed only on active sites such as like a metal like platinum. You cannot have any gas. Oxygen will not get adsorbed on this, or carbon dioxide will not get adsorbed on it. So specific gases will get adsorbed at specific solid sites. And that is why this is the word that is used, is that the chemisorption is specific. It is also exothermic in nature, but here if you notice I have written a word which is known as it is mostly exothermic in nature. That means we could have certain situations where the gases are essentially endothermic also. That means adsorption process is also endothermic. So in the exothermic process, and the heat of adsorption is much larger than what we had seen for physisorption. So heat of adsorption is about the same magnitude as the heat of a chemical reaction. So what kind of values are we talking about? If you remember, in terms of kilojoules per mole, for physisorption, the value was 4.2 to 63 kilojoules per mole. Here we are talking about a range of 40 to 400 kilojoules per mole. So the value is much larger, and these kind of values are the values which are seen for when we do the calculations for heat of reaction. It is irreversible in nature due to the formation of a surface compound, because it forms these strong bonds using valence forces, and though this process essentially is a chemisorption process, is irreversible. And chemisorption does not exceed monolayer. That means if you have a surface like this, the maximum chemisorbed species that is possible is when they have a layer on top of it, which is like this, forming a single layer on the surface. Here we will never have the formation of a multi-layer. The valence forces holding the molecules on the surface, these forces diminish with distance. As we go higher up and away from the surface, these forces go down, and hence these material cannot get adsorbed on the surface. So this is what are the essential properties of what is called as chemisorption. Now, putting all these properties together, we have this table which shows us the difference between physisorption and chemisorption. So what are the properties that we're talking about? In terms of forces of attraction, physisorption, the forces which are involved are van der Waals forces. Let me just get my pointer again. Okay, so the forces that are involved are van der Waals forces, and in case of chemisorption, the forces that are involved are known as the valence forces. These are similar to any chemical bond that is formed between two species. The heat of adsorption is low in this case, less than 15 kilocalories per mole. Sorry. And this is high in this particular case, where it is greater than 15 kilocalories per mole, with the exception of an endothermic adsorption, which I said is not very common, but it is possible. The activation energy is low, which is close to zero. That means we do not need too much of activation energy for the physisorption process to happen. However, in the case of chemisorption, we have higher activation energies involved, and the values are similar to what is involved for a chemical reaction. The temperature ranges, here I told you the physisorption process, the rate decreases as the temperature increases. So what we have is a low temperature range, and the chemisorption is involved at much higher temperatures. The specificity of the adsorbate-adsorbent interactions. So adsorbate is where it gets adsorbed, and adsorbent is what is absorbing it. So what we have is that it is non-specific, that is all gases get adsorbed on all solids, just like a condensation process. And this is specific in nature, that some gases will get chemisorbed only on some particular solids. And the coverage for a physisorption process is multi-layer, whereas for a chemisorption, it is less than monolayer, or at the most, it can be monolayer. So less than or equal to monolayer. The reversibility, is this process reversible or irreversible? It is fully reversible. That means physisorption is fully reversible, and the chemisorption process is irreversible. So what do I mean? So suppose I take a small amount of catalyst, and there is a physisorption process that happens on it. Then this catalyst, once the physisorption process is over, the catalyst can be reused, and you can again carry out a physisorption process on top of it. However, if the catalyst now involves this chemisorption process, then this process becomes an irreversible process. What is the use of it? The use is for determination of surface area and pore size. So what is the surface area? If you remember, I told you that catalysts must have very large surface areas, and surface areas can go from anywhere between 50 meters square per gram to 1000 meters square per gram. So how do we measure this surface area? This surface area is measured by using the physisorption process. And pore size means if you remember, I had told you that the porous catalysts will have, just a minute. Suppose we have a catalyst spherical pellet. There are pores like this inside, and these pores will have a radius which is known as the pore size. So the pore size is the radius of these the pores which are inside out here, and that is also measured by using the physisorption process. And where do I use the chemisorption process? In the chemisorption process, we use it for determination of metal area or active area of a catalyst or surface reaction kinetics. So suppose we have, suppose we have a situation where we have a catalyst surface. Just a moment, let me get my pen back. So we have a catalyst surface like this, and there are metal species. That means there are platinum species out here. Say, for example, these are metal species. It shouldn't be so big. All of them should be the same size. I'm sorry. Just my pen is not perfect. So suppose these are all platinum species, and I want to find out how many platinum species are there, what is the area of these platinum species. Then I would use the process which is known as chemisorption. Whereas the surface area of this entire surface which is there, that can be determined by means of physisorption. Now let us look at something a little more interesting. So what is it? I had told you that adsorption process is usually exothermic. In case of physisorption, it is always exothermic. And in case of chemisorption, I told you that it is mostly exothermic. In some cases, it might be endothermic. So if you look at it, that we can understand this process very easily by looking at the thermodynamics. So what happens from thermodynamics, you know that delta G, that means change in the Gibbs free energy, is equal to change in the enthalpy of the system minus T times delta S. That means temperature multiplied by the change in entropy. This is a standard expression that we know from our knowledge of thermodynamics, that delta G is equal to delta H minus T delta S. And you also know that for a spontaneous process, that means for a process to happen, your delta G must be negative. So this delta G must have a negative value. So this delta G must have a negative value. Now, if I want the physisorption process to happen, so that should be a spontaneous process. So my delta G should have a negative value. Now, a physisorption process, what happens to the entropy of the process during physisorption? So physisorption, what happens is that you have a surface, solid substrate, and you have these gas molecules which are there, which are freely roaming around. Now, after the process of physisorption that happens, these gas molecules now come and attach themselves on the surface of the solid. And because they attach themselves on the surface of the solid, it becomes more organized, as we call it, and hence this leads to a decrease in their entropy. So when the entropy decreases, that means delta S is less than 0. Now, if delta S is less than 0, that means it is a negative term. That means this is also negative. And if you multiply this by T, which is my absolute temperature, which is a positive value, and there's a negative sign in front of it, so this entire term becomes a positive value. Because there is a negative sign in front of it, delta S is also negative. So multiplication, if I do all of that, this becomes a positive value. So if this becomes a positive value, then delta G can be negative only when your delta H is also negative. So if delta H is sufficiently negative and it is more than the positive value of T delta S, then only will my delta G become negative. So delta G being negative or less than 0 essentially means that my physisorption process is exothermic in nature. Now, what happens in the case of a chemisorption process? In the case of the same thing should happen in the case of a chemisorption process, because my process should be spontaneous, and in order for the process to be spontaneous, delta G should be less than 0. Should be less than 0 for a chemisorption process, and delta S is also less than 0. Delta S is also less than 0. Because in most cases. That means when you have them free gas molecules are in the atmosphere or in the bulk, and when they get adsorbed on the surface, the entropy becomes low. And so if the entropy becomes low, that means entropy becomes, negative, then T delta S is positive, and the delta G has to be negative for the process, the entire process to be a spontaneous process, or the delta G should, for the delta G to have a negative value. Now what happens that this should happen always, but for certain specific cases, for example, what we call as dissociative chemisorption. So what is dissociative chemisorption? This is essentially that, for example, chemisorption, if you remember, I had told you, is a specific process. So suppose we have a surface like this, and you have a metal species like this. So when a gas like hydrogen gets adsorbed on it, now if the hydrogen gas gets adsorbed on these species as a whole, that means as H2 gas, then this would be called associative chemisorption. Whereas if we have two metal sites like this, and I can give you a specific example for that also. Suppose these sites are iron sites, Fe. Okay, here we have iron sites, which is known as Fe, and the hydrogen has to get adsorbed. Then sometimes what happens is that this hydrogen dissociates into two hydrogen atoms, and each hydrogen atom then interacts with this particular each metal site. So this kind of adsorption is known as dissociative chemisorption. And when we have dissociative molecule adsorption, the adsorbed molecules have a two-dimensional mobility. And because they are separating out and getting attached to two different iron sites, there is actually an increase in the degree of freedom. And because there's an increase in the degree of freedom, there is actually a net increase in the entropy. That means your delta S is actually greater than 0, because the final entropy is greater than my initial entropy. So what happens is that we have a positive value. So if I rearrange this top expression and write it in terms of delta H, I see that delta H should be equal to delta G plus T delta S. Now for dissociative chemisorption, delta S is positive, and T is also a positive value because it's an absolute temperature scale. So T delta S has got an entire positive value. And so for in case, and my delta G, if it is negative, this is negative, this is positive. If this value of delta G is sufficiently negative so that it is more than the T delta S value, then delta G is going to be negative. If delta G is negative and T delta S is positive, but T delta S is larger than my delta G, then delta H becomes a positive value. And if delta H is a positive value, then what we have is an endothermic process. Last part, let me just repeat it again. What we have seen is T delta S is now, because of dissociative chemisorption, this value is essentially a positive value. So depending on the value of delta G, the delta H value is either going to be positive or negative. If delta G is smaller than T delta S, then delta H will have a positive value. We have an endothermic adsorption process. If delta G is, the value of delta G is larger than the value of T delta S, that means the negative term is more than the positive term, then the net summation of that is delta H is negative, and this essentially makes my process an exothermic process. So this kind of a dissociative chemisorption is only involved when we have a chemisorption process and not a physisorption process. So this is why we can, in case of chemisorption, in certain cases, we might have an endothermic process, though not very common. Otherwise, overall, adsorption is more or less an exothermic process. Is that clear to everyone now?
Yes. Okay.
So the next thing that we need to talk about is what we call the adsorption isotherms. So what are adsorption isotherms? These are essentially expressions or relations between the amount of adsorbate, which is adsorbed on a given surface at a constant temperature, and the equilibrium concentration of the substrate in contact with the adsorbent. And so this relationship is known as an adsorption isotherm. You have already done adsorption isotherms in your mass transfer classes, and also people who have done the environmental course, you must have done that. If you remember, we had talked about Freundlich isotherm, etc. Those are adsorption isotherms, where we have a relationship between the amount adsorbed and what the equilibrium concentration on the substrate. And they are known as isotherms because this relationship is found out for a particularly constant temperature. So we need such relationships or quantitative expressions for adsorption when we are trying to develop the rate expressions for catalytic reactions. That's why we need to determine or find out these adsorption isotherms. So these adsorption steps and the desorption steps which are there in a chemical reaction process, they may be very fast and be almost near equilibrium. And that is why we are trying to find out for the relationship between the equilibrium concentration. So when we consider the adsorption and the desorption steps, when we do the chemical reaction, when we are trying to develop the rate expression for a chemical reaction, you will see that we will consider these to be very fast steps, and which will essentially go up to equilibrium, kind of reach equilibrium. So these adsorption isotherms, they portray the amount of gas adsorbed on a solid surface at different pressures, but at a single temperature. So based on this, let us first look at the simplest adsorption isotherm that we have, and this is known as the Langmuir adsorption isotherm. So what do we have? What are the assumptions which are there in the Langmuir adsorption isotherm? The assumptions are there. Let us see what the assumptions are and try to understand each one of them. So for a Langmuir adsorption isotherm, the assumptions are that the entire surface is energetically uniform. All the surface has the same activity for adsorption. So what does it mean? Let's suppose we have this entire surface where adsorption can take place. We have active sites where the adsorption is possible. Each of these sites are energetically uniform. So when a gas comes, it can attach itself to any of these sites, and the probability of it attaching to any of the sites is the same, because each of these are energetically uniform. That means they are homogeneous in terms of energy. There is no interaction between the adsorbed molecules. So suppose there is say an adsorbed molecule, say A, which is getting adsorbed on this site, and another molecule of A which is getting adsorbed on this site. There is no interaction between these two molecules. So this is what is assumed in when we develop the Langmuir adsorption isotherm, that there is no interaction between the adsorbed molecules. All adsorption occurs by the same mechanism, and each adsorbed complex has the same structure. That means when A is getting adsorbed on the site and another A is getting adsorbed on the second site or the third site or the fourth site, each of these processes, adsorption processes, are identical in terms of the mechanism. And each of these have the identical same structures. So whether we are looking at this species or we are looking at this species, they are identical to each other. There is no difference between them. So there's a homogeneity everywhere. The extent of adsorption is less than one complete monolayer on the surface. So the maximum amount of adsorption you can have is monolayer, and usually it is less than one monolayer on the surface of the solid. Heat of adsorption remains constant with surface coverage. So if you have a plot of heat of adsorption on this side with surface coverage, this is your surface coverage, is given by the letter theta, and this is your heat of adsorption. Heat of adsorption. Then what happens is that this will be a constant value. This will be, sorry, a straight line, absolute straight line. A constant value, that means the heat of adsorption remains constant with the surface coverage. Now let us look at each of these a little more in details about this Langmuir adsorption isotherm. A is, for example, a reactant adsorbed on the site S. Each of these sites where the adsorption can take place, these are given by these sites which are known as S. And A is the gas molecule which will get attached to this surface. Ct is the total molar concentration of the active sites per unit mass of catalyst. That means active sites per unit mass divided by the Avogadro number. So what do we have out here? See, say for example, there are 4 sites out here. That means the total number of sites out here, that is Ct, is equal to say 4. And what is Cv? Cv is the molar concentration of vacant sites. That means the vacant sites per unit mass per unit Avogadro number. So per unit Avogadro number, we have the number of vacant sites. So if you just look at this example, you will see that out of these 4 sites, 2 of them are occupied by the gas molecule A and 2 of them are free. So there are 2 vacant sites and 2 adsorbed sites. And the surface concentration of the site occupied by the species I, the gram mole per gram catalyst. If you do a site balance, that is now the site balance essentially means that you will see on one hand, the left hand side will be the total number of sites. On the right hand side, you will see that how many sites are occupied and how many sites are unoccupied. So this will be the vacant sites plus the summation of the sites that are occupied. In this particular case, what happens is that we have only species A getting attached to it. So the total number of sites is 4. You will see in this case there are 2 vacant sites and there are 2 sites which are occupied by the letter or by the gas species A. So CAS is the concentration of the occupied sites and this is the concentration of the vacant sites. Now, the rate of attachment of A to the surface is proportional to the number of collisions that are made on the surface per second. Obviously, the more the gas molecules come and hit this surface, the number of collisions, the more there are, the more would be the probability of these A species getting attached to the S species. So they are proportional to the number of collisions that are made on the surface per second. That means this is known as the collision rate. And the collision rate is now proportional to the partial pressure. How fast or how many times will they collide with the surface will depend on the partial pressure of gas A. Suppose we have only pure A available, so this partial pressure will be equal to the total pressure. And if you have more than one species, then the partial pressure is found out as the mole fraction into the total pressure. So it is proportional to the partial pressure of the core. That means the collision rate is proportional to the partial pressure of A and the concentration of vacant sites. So the collision rate will determine how many vacant sites are there where it might get attached. Because a reactant A can only absorb on a vacant site. So this is the rate of attachment or the rate of adsorption. So rate of adsorption can be written as it is proportional to the number of collisions, which in turn is also proportional to the partial pressure of A and the concentration of the vacant sites. Now, the rate of detachment or the rate of desorption, as we call it, is proportional to the concentration of the sites occupied by the adsorbed molecule A. Now, where can it get detached from? It can only get detached from the sites where it is already occupying. So, empty sites hai, it cannot get detached from there. So, there's a possibility of it getting detached, but only from these sites which are already occupied. That means it is proportional to the occupied sites. So now if I put all of these terms mathematically, so what happens is the rate of attachment is proportional to, I told you, the partial pressure of A and the number of vacant sites. So this is proportional to these two terms. And if you remove the proportionality constant and if you bring in a constant out here, this is known as Ka. And what is the rate of detachment? The rate of detachment is again proportional to the concentration of the occupied sites, which is concentration of occupied sites is C A dot S. And if you want to remove the proportionality constant, then because it is a process which is opposite to the attachment process, we write it as K with a subscript minus A. So the net rate of adsorption is going to be the rate of adsorption minus the rate of desorption. That is RA is equal to Ka PA into CV minus K minus A into C A dot S. That means the rate of adsorption minus the rate of desorption. At equilibrium, the rate of adsorption, the rate of the reaction is equal to 0. That means the rate of forward reaction becomes equal to the rate of the backward reaction. That means KAPACV is equal to K minus A into C dot S. So now if I do look at the site balance, what do I have? I have the total concentration of the total sites is equal to the number of vacant sites plus number of occupied sites. And I can write this rate at equilibrium. We had seen that the rate of the forward reaction is equal to the rate of, the rate of adsorption is equal to the rate of desorption. That means KAPA, and instead of CV, I'm writing it in terms of CT minus CA dot S. We got this expression from the side balance. And this is equal to K minus A into CA dot S. Now you open up the brackets. So what do we have? KAPA into CT minus KAPA into CA dot S. And this is equal to K minus A into C dot S. Now, if I take all the C dot S terms to one side, and we can have the other terms, but before that, we can also have it that we divide the KA term. Now, notice my letters that this is small ka. All of these Ks that I'm writing are small letters, that this is small ka. If I divide the left-hand side by small k minus a, then left-hand side, what do I have? Ka divided by k minus a, and then ka divided by k minus a. So Ka divided by K minus A is now written as a capital Ka. So what is capital Ka? Capital Ka is the adsorption equilibrium constant. The adsorption equilibrium constant is essentially, now we can put this adsorption equilibrium constant instead of this ratio of Ka divided by K minus A. So this becomes capital Ka into Pa into Ct minus capital Ka into Pa into Ca dot S, and is equal to CA dot S. Now we can put the CA dot S terms together. So what do I have out here? We have capital Ka into Pa into Ct, total sites, is equal to CA dot S and we can take this as common as 1 plus capital Ka, equilibrium constant of adsorption, multiplied by the partial pressure of A. Close the brackets. And if I now try to write out the concentration of the occupied sites, that means Ca dot S, divided by the total concentration of the sites, this is equal to KAPA divided by 1 plus KAPA. Now this term, that is Ca dot S plus Ct, what does this mean essentially? That the denominator we have the total number of sites, and in the numerator we have the number of occupied sites. So this is essentially a ratio of that, and that is the number of adsorbed sites occupied by the total number of adsorption sites which are there. This is CAS by CT. This is also written in terms of volume of gas adsorbed by the volume of gas adsorbed at monolayers. Because you know, for Langmuir isotherm, we have assumed that the maximum coverage that is possible is essentially only a single monolayer, that means Vm. After that, how much is occupied is given in the numerator, that is the volume of the gas adsorbed. And if you remember, I had told you that this is here, this theta term is known as surface coverage, that how much of the surface is essentially covered. So we are again talking about that how much of the surface is covered, that is my theta term. This is essentially given by a ratio of volume of gas adsorbed to the volume of gas adsorbed at monolayer coverage, which is also equal to the number of absorption sites occupied by the total concentration of the adsorption sites. So this CAS by CT is essentially nothing but your surface coverage theta. So your surface coverage theta can be written as KAPA divided by 1 plus KAPA. This is known as the Langmuir isotherm. And if I want to mathematically plot this Langmuir isotherm, where we have the surface coverage plotted versus the partial pressure of A, then what will happen is that at low volume values of partial pressure, the values of partial pressure are very small. So if we do not consider this value, theta is directly proportional to the partial pressure, and which can be seen as a straight line. Now, as we go to higher values of partial pressure, then what we have is essentially that this KAPA term becomes much larger than the one term. If one is ignored, these two terms gets cancelled out, and theta essentially becomes a constant value. So if I drew a plot, what happens is that it has got a linearly increasing nature in the beginning, and then this term flattens out and comes out as a straight line, which is in the form of a plateau. That means at low values of partial pressure, theta is directly proportional to the partial pressure, and at high values of partial pressure, it becomes theta. The theta becomes a constant value. Now, I told you that when we are talking about an Langmuir isotherm, which is essentially an adsorption process, when we have to carry out an experiment. So when we carry out an experiment in the laboratory, what do I know? That I can take a solid surface. I know the amount of solid I am taking. Now I pass some gas on top of it. So when I pass the gas, I know what is the concentration of the gas I'm passing. I also know how much of gas I'm passing. So I know that value. So the volume and how much of this gas I'm passing, and how much of the gas is coming out at the outlet. So the difference between the two will be the amount of gas adsorbed. So experimentally we can measure this value of amount of gas adsorbed, and in the denominator what we have is the amount of gas that should be adsorbed at monolayer. And the partial pressure of A is something that can also be mathematically now estimated or calculated. So if this, instead of writing theta, I have written it as V by Vm, because we had seen that it was written as C A dot S by CT, and which is also equal to V by Vm. So for experimental purposes, I have written theta in terms of V by Vm. And if I now rearrange this slightly means I take this 1 by KAPA to the numerator and pass that V to the bottom. So what do I get? KAPA divided by this volume has come to the denominator, and this 1 plus KAPA has gone to the numerator. 1 plus KAPA divided by the value which is at monolayer, or the volume which is covered at monolayer. So now if I again separate this term out, what do I get? This is KAPA by PV. So now I take this KA term to the right hand side, and what do I have on the left hand side? That is PA by V is equal to 1 by KA into Vm plus 1 by Vm into this KA, and KA again cancels out when I get it to the denominator, and in terms of partial pressure. So Vm is the volume that is occupied at monolayer. This is a constant value. Ka is my adsorption constant, which is also a constant value. And Vm, of course, I told you earlier, is a constant. So the variables are Pa by V, and this side, the variable is Pa. So this form of the Langmuir isotherm is something that we have written out after rearranging the equation, where we have Pa by V is equal to 1 by Ka Vm plus 1 by Vm into Pa. Now, if I plot Pa by V versus partial pressure. So if you think about doing an experiment, you see that partial pressure of A, that means a reactant gas I am introducing. Suppose I introduce a 10% gas. And so 10% of this gas which is introduced is actually the gas you want to get adsorbed, and the rest of it is, say, for example, an inert gas. So you know the partial pressure of the gas, and you know how much of the volume is getting adsorbed. How is that? You know the initial volume. You can calculate the volume which is coming out at the outlet. The difference between the two will give you the volume that is adsorbed. And if you plot the values, this comes out like these red dots which are there and like that. It is looking, the nature is like a straight line, but it is not a perfect straight line. But we can draw a straight line through this as a minimized curve. And if you look at it, this is a straight line equation. Y is equal to, this is my Y value, and this is my C value, and this is my M value. 1 by M is my, and PA is my X. So based on the straight line equation, I can plot it, and we will get a straight line. And what will happen once we have the straight line? The slope is going to give me the value of Vm. So the volume occupied at monolayer can be estimated or calculated using the slope of this equation. And if I want to calculate the intercept is equal to 1 by Ka Vm. Since we already know the value of Vm from the slope, what we can also find out from here is the value of the adsorption constant. So this is done when we carry out an experiment using a gas, and we measure the partial pressure and try to find out if a particular gas which is undergoing an adsorption process actually fits the Langmuir isotherm or not. So we take the experimental data, we plot the values of PA by V versus PA, and if I get a straight line, then I say that, okay, this system follows the Langmuir isotherm. And if I do not get a straight line, I say, okay, Langmuir isotherm is not there, we have to choose something else. And if it forms a straight line, then using the intercept and the slope, we can find out the value of Vm and Ka. Vm being the volume occupied at monolayer, which has got a serious advantage or use in the later stages, and Ka is the adsorption constant. Now, there is another way in which we can write out the Langmuir equation, which is in terms of the concentration. But this is something I will take it up in the next class, because I have to explain this very nicely again, that what happens if I'm writing in terms of concentration rather than writing in terms of partial pressure. So I will stop out here today, and from the next class we will continue with this Langmuir isotherm in terms of concentration, and then we will continue with the other isotherms that we have.